Mr. Beat here, and I'm at the Robert J. Dole Institute of Politics to pay my respects to the late, great Senator Bob Dole, who passed away today at the age of 98. He was one of the greatest senators we ever had. I've been here many times. It's basically like a presidential museum, but he was never president. Got close back in 1996, but tonight we're going to look at the legacy of Senator Dole. I think a lot of folks don't realize how much impact he had, and I'll take your questions, but thanks for joining me tonight. Yes, so you are looking at footage of inside this wonderful Dole Institute, which is, like I said, close to where I live. I've been there many times. Bob Dole himself, he started this place. There's my daughter. He started this place to basically, the theme is ending partisanship. He wanted a bipartisan legacy, and so that's the theme of this place. And you can kind of see, like, a lot of the museum is just examples of him working with members of the other political party, which he was a Republican. And so, but he throughout his career, he worked with Democrats. And we're going to go over his legacy tonight. So thanks for being here. There I am. I'm here. This is live. I'm seeing all you in the chat. Can we hear me okay? Are we good? I better check to make sure the sound is even good, going all right. Yeah, it's working. So anyway, Bob Dole, the senator, and before that, he was a U.S. representative and would-be presidential candidate, was a pretty big freaking deal. And, I am biased because he's from Kansas. And I'll go ahead and show myself now. So the footage is over. I'm biased because he's from Kansas. He represented my state for more than 3 decades. When I was a kid growing up, I became a fan of Bob Dole. Most of you are probably aware of him because of his presidential runs, in particular his 1996 presidential run, which made him more of a household name, and that's why many of you have heard of him. But he did a lot of great work, especially in the U.S. Senate. He was a statesman, a public servant, somebody who did a lot of work behind the scenes. When he was in the spotlight, he was really charismatic and, funny. He could have been a stand-up comedian, one of the funniest politicians in history. You didn't see it as much during his presidential run in 1996, but he was hilarious. And we're going to see some examples tonight in the stream. So the first part of the stream, I'm just going to go over the highlights of his life. For those of you who are just now like watching and you have no idea what's going on, this morning, Elizabeth Dole, the wife of Bob Dole, she, who herself has a distinguished career, her foundation announced that Bob Dole had passed away from lung cancer. He died in his sleep last night, apparently. He was 98 years young. 98. Born July 22nd, 1923. On his 80th birthday, by the way, was when back in 2013 is when he opened up that was 2000. I'm sorry, 2003 is when he opened up the Dole Institute that I was showing you earlier and where I was filming. I went there this afternoon. I dragged my family there, and I was like, "Hey, let's stop by. Come on, let's pay our respects." And it was cool to see people doing the same. So thank you for being here. It looks like I already got a super chat. I got to show these because I keep forgetting to do that. Not to mention, he was the first vice president nominee to participate in the vice presidential debates. Yes, I actually shared that in my election of 1976 video. So thank you so much, Justin, from San Antonio. What a lovely city that is. I've only been there once. Want to go back. Okay, so let's look at the life of the late Senator Bob Dole. A long life. He had a good run, lots of accomplishments. And the point I want you to really understand is that, you know, he is one of the greatest U.S. senators in American history. He had more impact than most U.S. senators. If you watch my top 10 U.S. senators video, he didn't quite make the cut. His colleague, fellow Kansas Senator Nancy Kassebaum did make the cut, but he would have been in my top 15, no doubt. He's a top 15 all time for me. So I've always had much respect for him. I have seen Bob Dole in person 2 times. The first time I was in college at KU, he came back. It wasn't really one of those things where I got very close to him. The second time was, I think it was right around the time I graduated from the University of Kansas. And Bob Dole went to the University of Kansas, by the way, which is why he gave back so much to the university. But the second time I saw him down in Pittsburgh, Kansas. My shout out to my friend Kevin, who was working for the newspaper down there, and he had connections to get us front row seats, and so we got an up close view of Bob Dole. But that was in 2004, I believe, maybe 2005. I don't remember exactly when, but anyway, so it was cool to see him in person. Okay, just the recap of who he is. Okay, Bob Dole was born, like I said, 1923, July 22nd, in Russell, Kansas. Which is about 3 hours west of Lawrence, where I live, about 3.5 hours west of Kansas City, kind of out there in the middle of nowhere. If you drive from Kansas City to Denver along Interstate 70, you go through it. But he always was someone who never talked trash about his hometown, and he always gave back, always went back whenever he could. Bob Dole, the banana guy. Yeah, funny story about that, Blake, is that there were other politicians in other countries that thought he was related to the Dole family from, infamous Dole family that were up to shenanigans to take over Hawaii and make all that money in a shady way. And Bob Dole, of course, was not related to any of those Doles, but he said, "I want to play this anyway." And so he pretended that he was related to and he would bring along cans of Dole food stuff on his campaign just to be silly. He had a great sense of humor. You're going to see that. Okay. Anyway, back to Russell, Kansas. He was a star athlete in high school. And so because of that, especially in basketball and football, he got the attention of Phog Allen, who was one of the greatest college basketball coaches of all time, maybe the best Kansas University has ever seen. He went all the way out to Russell, Kansas to recruit him, and it must have worked because he got a scholarship at KU. Not only played basketball, but football and track. He was a 3-sports athlete there at the University of Kansas. This was in 1941, early 1940s, I should say. 1942, he's like, I can't stay home anymore. I'm going to go enlist in, you may know something was going on at the time, World War II. So after Pearl Harbor, he was inspired to enlist. He left college and he served, and he saw combat. It was crazy. He was in Italy is where he spent much of his time. And while he was there, German shell hit his upper back and right arm, back here, shattered his collarbone, and actually part of his spine. The injury was so bad, he was paralyzed from the waist down, and he believed that he would probably never walk again. But he was determined to walk. And after months, almost a year of rehab and physical therapy, he was able to walk again. But for a good year, he was stuck in a bed or a chair for the rest of his life because of that injury. It took him, it made his right arm not function properly, and he had numbness. And so if you ever see him where he's in a situation where he would have to shake a lot of people's hands, he would carry a pin in his hand just like this in his right hand, so people wouldn't shake it, so they would know, because it would not be very pretty. So he shook with his left hand. for that reason. And so if you ever, especially the 1996 presidential election campaigns, he always had that pen in his right hand. And Norm Macdonald, who impersonated Bob Dole for Saturday Night Live, who passed away a few months ago, just a strange coincidence. But Norm Macdonald impersonated him, and he made sure he had the pen as well. Anyway, so after the war was over, after he had recuperated, he did go back to school, back to college. He decided to get out of Kansas, though. He wanted to, I think, seeing the world kind of made him realize, I need to get out of Kansas. And so he ended up in Arizona, where he finished his degree and ended up going on to law school, got a law degree, as politicians do. He knew he wanted to get into politics in college, though. And then just a short while later, he did get into politics, but he became homesick. So he came back to Kansas and he moved back to his hometown of Russell, became a state representative first, representing Russell County out there in Western Kansas. Then people seemed to really want him to run for national office. And so this was in 1950. Believe it or not, 1950 was when he first ran for the Kansas House of Representatives. He was a career politician. There was no turning back. So from 1950 all the way up to the mid-1990s, he was a representative either at the local or national level. And in the 1960s, he ran and won for national office. He started out, like I said earlier, in the U.S. House of Representatives, representing his district in Western Kansas, which is a pretty large district area-wise because hardly anybody lives out there, less today than back then, actually, in the 1960s. When he was first elected to the House, he was 37 years old. He decided he really wanted to focus a lot on agricultural issues a lot because Kansas is still a very agricultural state, lots of farming here, not as much as it used to be, but in the 1960s, still a very big part of our economy. And then working in the House, he was a little frustrated that he wanted to spend more time working with his colleagues and debating. And he's like, I really just want to get to the Senate. That's where the real fun happens. And so he was able to get some big names to help him out. And he won an election for the first time in 1968, becoming a U.S. Senator. And he loved the Senate, loved it. When he joined the Senate was around the time at the height of the Vietnam War. He was not the biggest fan of the Vietnam War, but he hesitantly supported it because he's like, we've already made the investments and our troops are already there. We need to keep supporting them. And so he would, when Nixon first took over around that same time, Nixon would actually send Dole out there to try to defend what was going on, although both of them knew that the troops had to come home and it wasn't going well. I disagreed with Dole on Vietnam. I would have brought him home yesterday. But anyway, hey, Dead History is here. Thanks for the super chat. In your opinion, had he defeated Clinton in 96, what would have been the biggest difference and changes to our nation under a Dole administration? You rock. Well, thank you. Before I get to that, let me go through the rest of the Senate history because I think my answer might surprise you, but I'm going to answer that. I promise. So in the Senate, after the Vietnam War was over, a lot of it was domestic. He got on the committee, the Agricultural Committee, of course. For most of his career, he was on that in the Senate. He also got on the Finance Committee later on. But the thing that stands out the most about Bob Dole, who famously spoke in the third person just to kind of, I think, mostly troll people, but he thought it was kind of funny and he just kept doing it. But Bob Dole worked across the aisle more often than he did not. It's funny because at first, when he, in the 70s, he kind of had a reputation more as a partisan guy, as a hardliner, like, oh, I don't know if I can work with that guy. But then he turns around and he works with George McGovern. George McGovern, of course, was very far to the left, Democrat. Now, I would classify Dole as more of a moderate, although he maybe started further right, but he was a pretty open-minded guy and his mind changed over the decades. And so But what you really noticed about him is that he's like, I realize I'm not going to get what I want, and so I'm going to try to get most of what I want at least, and that I'm going to call that a win because I can always get the rest later. It was his deal. Um, so almost 3 decades he was in the Senate from the late 60s until 1996. Some highlights that I wrote down here is, well, he was obviously a Senate minority leader for a few years in the late 80s, early 90s. Also Senate majority leader from 1985 to 1987, as well as 1995 to 1996, his last year in office. He really, like, as far as the issues that were important to him, a balanced budget was important. He was really, really close to getting a balanced budget amendment passed in the Senate, one vote short. He was a supply side economics guy, so that's why him and Reagan got along in that regard. He wanted lower taxes. He wanted more money in Americans' pockets. But that didn't mean that he didn't want a strong social safety net, as we'll see with some of this other legislation that he championed. Emperor Tiger Star, thanks. Still sounds like Homer Simpson, but more normal. Okay. I didn't see that coming. Yeah. So Rosado Eater, would Bob Dole be considered a rhino by the Trump wing of the party if he was a senator today? I would say so, yes, absolutely. Although Dole was always loyal to the party, always loyal till the very end. He endorsed Trump in 2016 and 2020. A bit hesitantly, but he still endorsed him because he wanted party unity. He was a big tent guy. He wanted the party to be a big tent. Anyway, so other highlights, other than the tax reform bill of 1986 that he championed, he fought for healthcare reform. Yeah, before it was cool. In the early 90s, he fought for healthcare reform. Now, he favored more market-oriented approaches, but the Comprehensive Campaign Finance Reform Act, he was a sponsor of that. The Women's Equal Opportunity Act. These are bills that never passed, by the way. They died after he first introduced them and sponsored them. The Sexual Assault Prevention Act. The Megan's Law, which was protecting children from sex offenders. Some of these did pass, like that one. One of the biggest ones that he did get passed was one, where he worked across the aisle. He worked with all kinds of Democrats passing the American with Disabilities Act in 1990, one of the most important legislation in American history. I'm going to show you a clip later where he kind of talks about that process. Food stamps was really important to him. Food security. He's like, government should step in to feed the poor. There should no person in the richest country in the world should ever starve. So that was a really important issue to Bob Dole. He worked with George McGovern, as I said earlier, but particularly on increasing access to food stamps. He was not somebody that fell for that welfare queen stereotype trope thing that was in the early 80s. He didn't fall for that crap. He believed in these certain safety net. And that's what, maybe he would be called a rhino by some in the Republican Party today. Let's see what else. But yeah, he was also big about getting lobbyists and special interests out of he saw how influential they were in politics. Now, I say that, and one thing that really turned me off from Dole was after he retired from the Senate, he became a lobbyist for a while. He was one of those guys he used to talk trash about. Just a cog in the machine, member of the another person caught up in the system, whatever. We can't excuse it too much. But yeah, nobody's perfect, right? As far as his personal life, he was married twice. His first wife, her name was Phyllis Holden, married her in 1954. She was from Michigan, and they had a child. And later on, 1975, after they divorced in 1972, he got remarried in 1975 to who I talked about earlier, who was a very influential person herself, Mary Elizabeth Hanford, more commonly known as Elizabeth Dole today. She was actually in the cabinet of both Ronald Reagan and George H.W. Bush. She was Secretary of Transportation under Reagan, later Secretary of Labor into the Bush administration, Bush Sr., and she was a senator representing North Carolina later. They liked North Carolina, so they were there for a while. Their final years they were spent living in Washington, D.C., wanted to be close to where the action was, but Dole always came back to Kansas, and that's why I saw him a couple times here. In fact, in 2014, he had a kind of a you call it a reunion tour where he went to every county in Kansas. He came back originally to endorse Pat Roberts, the guy run for re-election for the Senate at the time, but he just stayed and made it like something where he could visit every county in his beloved state. Bob Dole was the longest serving representative leader in the U.S. Senate until 2018 when Mitch McConnell took that record, surpassed him. Now, presidential runs, like I said, it's how you know him. First of all, he did run as the running mate in 1976 to Gerald Ford. When Gerald Ford ran for election, remember Ford was in there after Nixon resigned, and so this was really Ford's first election in 1976, running against Jimmy Carter. And the first televised debates between vice presidential candidates were that year. And so you saw Mondale and Dole go at it. I think you can find them online. They're pretty good. Now, they lost that election, of course. Carter and Mondale won. But in 1980, people were like, we really like this Dole guy, and maybe we should just try to make him be a presidential candidate. He's from the middle of the country, Yeah, let's try it out. Didn't do very well in 1980. Had a much better shot in 1988 when there was more of a vacuum. Remember, 1980, Reagan. It was all about Reagan. Okay, mostly about Reagan. So 1988 is a little bit, okay, maybe so, but no. The vice president at the time, Bush Sr., gets it. So then we jump ahead to, 1996. Bill Clinton has been president for the last 4 years. It's a weird situation where you have a Democrat in the White House, but he's more moderate. And also in 1994, what happens is a revolution of sorts when Republicans retake both the House and the Senate after many, 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 many years of not having control, and they bring sweeping reforms with them, or anti-reforms in some ways, but just a big conservative shift in 1994. And along with that momentum, they're hoping, let's get a Republican in the White House. Bob Dole, the two things that really made him a good nominee in 1996, his experience, especially with, getting legislation passed. A lot of bills he worked on didn't get passed, but a lot of the stuff that did get passed is because of him, and you don't hear about it. The other big thing is that he was fairly moderate, and he could maybe attract some of those Clinton voters from 1992 who didn't think things were going well. And, taxes, you want lower taxes again. Okay. He was up there. In 1996, he was 73 years old. If he would have been elected, he would have been the oldest president ever elected, first elected in American history. Well, now it's not that big a deal, right? Because now we know that he lived until last night and at the 98. And we also know that, hey, right now we have Joe Biden as freaking president who's 79, and he's talking about running for re-election. So in hindsight, it was a little silly to worry about his age, but at the time they were really worried about it. He was the last World War II veteran really to go for the presidency. And of course, his opponent, Bill Clinton, was seen as this this baby boomer guy who was he got out of serving in Vietnam. He evaded the draft. And so that was something that really a lot of Dole supporters they brought that up a lot. Anyway, I was a Dole supporter. My whole family was. Most of my family's Republican, of course. I've mentioned that before. But as a kid, I was how old was I? 1996. I would have been middle school, I think, going into high school after that. Yeah. I liked Dole. He was also just somebody that was a likable guy, fun, and you're going to see that here shortly. Okay, so I've been rambling for a lot. I've put links in the description of this video you can check out later, but I'm going to share my screen here and we'll look at a few things. All right, let's start with this one. So, first of all, I have a song I wanted to share with you. That's this is from the Warsh Hots. This what's my friend Steve, his side project, but it's the Bob Dole song, and this. Okay, where are we at here? Yeah, I'm gonna start over. I'm gonna play some of this for you. It's a bit rocking, but he made a song about every would-be president in American history that lost the election. Because he found out that I had already made songs about every president. So it's like, dang it, somebody already did that. I was going to do that, but I'll just do the runners up. And so this was his Bob Dole song here.
Born in Russell, Kansas.
Yes, he was.
Popular student athletes. Enlisted in the army.
Yes, he did.
Became a second lieutenant. He was severely wounded. Lost the use of his right arm. Came home and went to law school. Then got into politics. Won a seat in the state legislature.
Disco song from 1985.
And served as a county attorney. Elected to the U.S. House of Representatives in 61 and served in 68, then went into the Senate where he
This is just a good chronological song here.
of the Republican National Committee.
Oh, that's something I didn't mention. That he was the chair of the Republican National Committee. So that's how loyal he was to the Republican Party. He did so much for the party.
Ran as the vice presidential candidate under President Gerald Ford. Married Elizabeth Hanford, a prominent Republican leader in her own rights. Elected Senate Majority Leader, the longest serving GOP leader in the Senate of all time.
This song was made before 2018. You can listen to the whole thing. I put it in the link. But yeah, I'm gonna just because I want to watch the Chiefs game here at some point. Let's go to his now. C-SPAN's been posting some videos today, and I'm going to show. This is one they posted today. It's his retirement speech, basically. He on June 11th was his last day. June 11th, 1996, before he ran for president. He's like, I got to quit the Senate, and this speech is so good. I was watching it earlier. It's his farewell speech. And he talks a lot about, again, bipartisanship, compromise, something that doesn't happen much anymore. And I'm nostalgic for this type of senator. Really, I mean, and he had lots of friends who were Democrats. He loved working with Democrats. He loved working with people who had different opinions than him. And it really was a different era. It seems like so long ago, but this speech was just 25 years ago. So, we got fun fact. He later said that putting a native Kansan in the U.S. Army Mountain Ski Division in Northern Italy was probably a bad idea. Yeah, I remember that joke as well. All right, looks like I missed one here. I'm going to try to get it for you. Hey, where are you at? Just this. Any politicians today that you'd say are similar to Bob Dole. I'd say he sort of seems like the Republican governor of Vermont, Phil Scott. I'm not too familiar with Phil Scott, but I would say that's probably a good comparison. The Maryland governor, oh gosh, Larry Hogan. Yeah, he's maybe similar to that as well. Not a whole lot, honestly. It's kind of sad. It's kind of sad. So we're gonna go to this farewell speech. This he's like, okay, half the time during this speech, he is about ready to cry. The other half, he is cracking jokes. And again, I told you earlier, he could have been a stand-up comedian. He was a funny dude. You didn't see it much during his. We're just going to watch clips of this, not the whole thing. The whole thing is about 30 minutes. But.
I appreciate very much the resolution just passed. Will it be in big letters or neon or?
Always making his colleagues laugh.
I know it can't have any political advertising on it, but just have the name out there in lights the next few months might be up.
Yes, because he was still going to run for president here, so that was before that.
Well, I want to thank all of my colleagues.
About ready to cry here. This was a packed house. Everybody showed up. Former colleagues showed up.
136 years ago this summer, a committee arrived in Springfield, Illinois. Senator Simon probably knows the story. To formally notify Abraham Lincoln that the Republican Party had nominated him to run for president. And history records that Lincoln's formal reply to the news was just 2 sentences long. And then as he surveyed the crowd of friends, as I surveyed the crowd of friends here in the galleries and on the floor, who had gathered outside his home, he said, "And now I will no longer defer the pleasure of taking each of you by the hand." So I guess as Lincoln said then, 136 years ago, if all of us who are leaving this year, and I'm only one, I know we have the same thoughts and the same emotions. If we could all go out and shake hands of all the people who are responsible for us being here, it would take a long, long time. You begin with your family. You obviously begin with your parents, your brothers, your sisters. And you think about all the support they provided and all the good things that happened. So I'm very honored to have my wife, Elizabeth.
I'm going to skip ahead here to, he gives a shout out to Elizabeth, but I'm going to skip ahead here to a spot that I thought was particularly, where he gets more into the bipartisanship that's so lacking today, but was much more common in the 1990s. Really, from the 1940s to the 1990s, we had about 50 years of the two major political parties working together often. And it wasn't just omnibus bills where they all just like get a little sliver and pack it in there. No, this was major legislation. Something else I didn't mention about Bob Dole is he was a very vocal supporter of the civil rights legislation in the 1960s when several of his Republican colleagues were not, Democratic colleagues were not. He was a big supporter of the Civil Rights Act and the Voting Rights Act the next year. Martin Luther King Jr., by the way, the holiday, he's a big reason why that's a federal holiday is because of Bob Dole. I forgot to mention that. But we're going to watch another clip here where he talks about bipartisanship.
And yes, the institution has its imperfections.
It does? Oh, yeah.
And our occasional inefficiency.
It's very inefficient sometimes. It's supposed to be.
And we're like America. We're still a work in progress in the United States Senate. So I would say to my colleagues, I remember way back when I ran for the Kansas legislature, we had a Democratic law librarian who thought young people ought to get involved in politics. So she found 2 Republicans and 2 Democrats and talked us into running for the state legislature. We didn't know anything about politics, didn't know what party we were in. We were students, veterans, going to school under the GI Bill. And I thought about which party to belong to, and I've said in jest from time to time. I went back to my hometown and went up to the courthouse and found out there were more Republicans than Democrats, and I became a committed Republican. It's not quite accurate, but my parents were Democrats. And I remember the first time I was ever approached by a reporter.
Rebel.
Here I was I was a law student, brand new legislature. I didn't know anything about anything.
Yeah, I should say that his parents, I believe, were FDR New Deal Democrats, from what I can remember.
And they said, well, what are you going to do now for your district or something in that case? I said, oh, I'm going to sit around, watch for a couple of days, and then stand up for what's right. Well, that's what we all do around here. And I hope I've done it over the years. And I would not just take a minute or two to indulge in, some of the things we all have different interests. I've been deeply involved in agriculture, as many as you have here, because Kansas is a farm state. And when I came to Congress, I was on the House Ag Committee, and I've been on the Senate Ag Committee ever since. And so I'm proud of having served the farm families of Kansas and around America who make a lot of sacrifices. This year we didn't have a wheat crop hardly at all in Kansas because of the drought. I'm advised by Senator Dorgan they're not going to have much of one because of the wet, the water. So farmers make a lot of sacrifices. And I remember back in the Vietnam debate, some of us were here and some were on each side of the issue. The so-called Cooper Church amendments, it went on and on.
This is where he gets into the bipartisanship. I'm going to skip ahead just a little bit here, where he talks about
when it affected low-income Americans.
The food stamps.
And I think, as I look at it, no first-class democracy can treat its people like second-class citizens. And I remember standing on this floor managing the Martin Luther King holiday bill. We had the majority. It was a proud day for me. It's now a national holiday. And the first speech I ever made on the floor was April 14, 1969, about disabled Americans.
Yep.
And I know a lot of people in this room have worked on that program, and I know Senator Kennedy and Senator Harkin and Senator Dernberger, and he was here.
21 years later, it passed.
And Senator Jennings Randolph, before many of you came, was in the forefront. We stood with many who couldn't stand on their own. And the highlight was passing the Americans with Disabilities Act.
Yep, that was his biggest accomplishment.
43 million Americans. They're not all seriously disabled, but there are many in wheelchairs, many who can't even sit up. And it was a very impressive sight to be at the White House the day that bill was signed by President Bush. And I'm forever grateful. I know Senator Kennedy and Senator Harkin and others are. Have you ever seen so many wheelchairs at the White House at a signing ceremony? Never.
And you notice, I mean, he had a disability himself. That's a big reason why he was so passionate about this. And you can see in his right hand there's the pen. It's also something that kept it stable because it would shake.
And now more and more Americans with disabilities are full participants in the process. They're in the mainstream. So I remember 1983, and I know Pat Moynihan remembers, we were standing right over in this aisle. We had a bipartisan commission on Social Security. We had met week after week, month after month, and it was about to go down the drain. We'd about given up. Everybody was disgusted. We were getting short-tempered. We were Democrats and Republicans. The late John Hines was a member of that commission. As chairman of the Finance Committee, I was a member. Senator Moynihan was a member. And Senator Moynihan, I think just by chance or fate or whatever, happened to meet in this aisle on my right. And we said, we got to try one more time to rescue Social Security. One more time. It wasn't a partisan issue. And we did. That afternoon, we convened 3 more people. We had 5 at the commission. And it wasn't long, we were back on track, and we finally made it happen. And 37 million people have gotten their checks on time. And I think I read in the Washington Post just this weekend, Social Security is going to be in pretty good shape until the year 2029. So that's a pretty good fix.
Yeah, I think it's still good until 2029. Let's we'll skip here to the end here because you can watch this whole thing. I'll put the link in the description, but just some highlights here. Really good speech.
Think back. I don't think we've ever had any real disagreements. I remember one time, I'll remind the Democratic leader, that I offered an amendment
Talking about bipartisanship.
that you thought
again.
you were going to offer. And I made a mistake. I wasn't trying to one-up the senator from South Dakota, so I withdrew my amendment. And he offered the amendment. I think that's called civility. So I would close with my hero is Dwight Eisenhower.
Go figure, huh?
Because he was our supreme commander. He also came from Abilene, Kansas, born in Texas, but quickly moved to Kansas. I'd say to Phil, he's only 2 years old. It took a while, but in any event, this is his quote. As we peer into society's future, we, you and I, and our government must avoid the impulse to live only for today, plundering for our own ease and convenience the precious resources of tomorrow. We cannot mortgage the material assets of our grandchildren without risking the loss of their political and spiritual heritage. We want democracy to survive for all generations to come, not to become the insolvent phantom of tomorrow. And I think those words are just as good today as they were 35 years ago when President Eisenhower spoke them. We can lead or we can mislead as the people's representatives. But whatever we do, we will be held responsible. We're going to be held responsible and accountable.
Kind of.
And I'm not talking about 1996. I'm talking about any time or the next century. So the Bible tells us to everything there is a season. And I think my season in the Senate is about to come to an end. But the new season before me makes this moment far less the closing of one chapter than the opening of another. And we all take pride in the past, but we all live for the future. And I agree with the prairie poet Carl Sandburg, who told us, yesterday has a wind gone down, a sun dropped in the west. I tell you that there's nothing in the world, only an ocean of tomorrows, a sky of tomorrows. And like everybody here, I'm an optimist. I believe our best tomorrows are yet to be lived. So again, thank you. God bless America, and God bless the United States Senate.
So pretty good speech. I only played highlights, but the tone of it is, of course, just like you said there at the end, optimism, but really pragmaticism, I think, defines his legacy more than anything. Doing whatever he can to make sure that the most people are taken care of, because the Senate, we all know, if you're watching this, if you're a fan of my channel, if you're a fan of American political history, you know it's a slow process here in the United States, especially in the Senate. We have one guy right now, Joe Manchin, that seems to have all this power, that seems to be slowing things down. By the way, Joe Manchin, I think gets too much crap. I know, I'm the only one saying that on YouTube. But ultimately, though, these 100 men and women in the Senate currently, they all are pretty independent, despite the R or D or I in front of their name. and a lot of times it's really hard to get things done in the Senate. A little bit easier in the House, but still crazy there too. So I want to take questions here if you have some. There's one really other quick thing I wanted to show you. I had tweeted it earlier as well. Actually, I'll just play it from my Twitter here. He can't stress enough how much of a sense of humor he had. He he was on Saturday Night Live after he lost that presidential election in 1996, and just hilarious. I wish he would have been on that show more. Let's see. I got to find it. Sorry. I need a producer. Where's my producer at? Okay. There it is. Josh Jordan, who I don't even know who this is, but he shared this. He was on with Norm Macdonald, the late Norm Macdonald. So I thought that was pretty cool to see this today.
You're really doing an impression of Dan Aykroyd when he does an impression of me. You know it, and I know it, and the American people know it.
Come on now, Senator. It's a great impression. Listen to this. Come November 5th, a lot of people are going to be surprised by Bob Dole because Bob Dole is going to win this election.
Doesn't sound a thing like me. First of all,
it wasn't very good. Actually.
I don't run around saying Bob Dole does this and Bob Dole does that. That's not something Bob Dole does. You're really doing an impression of Dan Aykroyd when he does an impression.
That's just a little bit of it that they posted. Okay, so in conclusion, a phenomenal senator. He will be missed. If you just joined us, Bob Dole, the former presidential candidate multiple times, vice president candidate, but more importantly, legislative force in the U.S. Senate and House of Representatives, passed away last night at the age of 98. His legacy is tremendous, and we need more senators like him. Frankly, we don't have many senators like him anymore. So I was thinking some of you would bring that up. But let's take your questions here. I do have a Chiefs game I want to catch here, but I like this just as much as the Chiefs. So I'm going to go back here to see if I miss Eric. Okay. Eric says, Bob Dole sounds like he's a combination of the two U.S. senators from my home state of Wisconsin. R. Johnson and T. Baldwin are polar opposites of each other in terms of their political beliefs. Yeah, and, I don't know as much about Baldwin, but I think it's not even about policies as much because Dole was pretty reliably conservative. I mean, I should say lean to the right, although you could say he was a moderate. I think his rhetoric, though, was really important, and the relationships. You just don't see senators playing golf or tennis or whatever the senators do together as much in 2021 as you did in 1996. You don't see that camaraderie, the friendship. You see the softball games that they still do every year or most years. That's the closest we get. A lot of them do hate each other, and we've seen what's been happening with what's her name, the representative from Georgia, who the only reason why she's in there is she didn't have much competition. Green, you know who I'm talking about, Marjorie Green, whatever. Yeah, I don't know if she really feels that way, but some of her rhetoric is hateful. And Boebert, what she said, the one from Colorado about Ilhan Omar. Omar actually, she says nasty stuff too, but she's not calling her a terrorist. I don't know. The rhetoric has gotten really bad. And I think some of these members actually hate each other, which is disturbing, troubling to me. All right. Thanks for the super chats. We got Marcus. Do you know Dan Carlin's podcast? I see a lot of similarities with your channel. You guys should do a collaboration. Absolutely. I started listening to Dan Carlin's Hardcore History. What was it? 2012, I think. So I've been around his podcast. I haven't listened to it as much lately. He had another podcast called Common Sense, where he had more of his contemporary takes on things. Him and I politically probably are very close. we're both very, very close politically. So yeah, we would get along just fine. It's kind of funny how a lot of people who study history have very similar political views. Most history teachers, by the way, have similar political views as well. I don't know what that is. It's I don't know. I guess we all have the same biases, I guess. All right. And I got Dead History again. If you haven't subscribed to Dead History, please do so. And Emperor Tiger Star, for crying out loud. Two amazing channels. We've collaborated. We all know each other. But yeah, Dead History, being a grave guy. Is that your nickname? Oh boy. Hey, by the way, I've been visiting the grave sites this year. I've been to JFK, George Washington. What was the other one I went to? Maybe it was just two. Maybe I'm going to another one soon. Anyway, the consensus is probably Arlington and Virginia. Being from Kansas, have you heard of any burial plans for Dole in Kansas? You still rock. Thank you. Okay, I Googled the heck out of it this afternoon. I asked people at the museum. Nobody knew. The people at the museum were just KU students, and I don't think they really they were like, oh, I don't even really know if they knew who Dole was, but they're these young kids these days. Oh gosh, I sound old. Anyway, I have no idea. I'm hoping that it's Russell, his hometown where he spent the first 20 some years of his life. I think that's what some people were saying. Okay. Moonlight Productions. Thank you. What kind of reactions have from you and other Kansas residents from today's announcement from Mr. Dole? Here in Kansas, even if you lean to the left politically, generally you have tremendous respect for Bob Dole. Okay. I lean to the left of Dole on certain issues for sure, definitely. And I'm a prime example of that. So there's something about somebody who, even if you disagree with them, they're willing to work with you and they respect you. They come at you in good faith, which you don't see as much of today. You really don't. And so generally most Kansas today are, remembering him fondly, especially those who are older, who were around when he was in Congress. So yeah, it's remember, he went to the University of Kansas, which I'm just a few minutes from right now, and a lot of love, especially in this city. And of course, Russell's out west. I'm sure some people got together. Is anybody in the comments from Russell, Kansas, or just Kansas in general? I want to hear from you. Fire Goat, have any thoughts on Joshua Lawrence Chamberlain? I don't know who that is, but let me Google it really quick. Was an American college professor from Maine who volunteered during the American Civil War. I will have to go down a rabbit hole and research about this person. Seems like an interesting cat. Thanks for bringing him to my attention. Insert alias here. There you are again. Favorite national history besides American? Oh, I got to say, it's a tie probably between Italy because of the Roman Empire, maybe France and England, those three, I guess. I'm tempted to say something like the Ottoman Empire, because I'm not that big into world history, but when I was researching the Ottoman Empire, I remember for the first time really getting into it. I was particularly fascinated by the Ottoman Empire, and maybe it was partially because I was never really taught it much, like in high school. It was when I was in college, it was like, oh wow, this is amazing. Yeah, same with Chinese history is pretty interesting, especially ancient Chinese history. You look at what they were doing 3,000 or 4,000 years ago, and you're like, oh, they were doing that before they were doing that in Rome and the Roman Empire, and before the Greeks even, well before the Europeans. So why don't we learn this? Because, oh, I know why, because we're very Western centered here. That's why. But anyway, yes, that's a good question. I like that question. Ridge. Thank you. Wow. Hi, Mr. B. Been a huge fan for a while and greatly appreciate all your work to educate young people about U.S. history and make it exciting. Well, thank you, Ridge. Just curious, do you have a favorite presidential campaign button? Well, I have a few behind me, and I would say, like, you notice I have one up here that says, oh, let me get the Dole for president, by the way. But in that little box there, my father-in-law actually got me this for Christmas. But there's a pretty good one of McGovern, George McGovern, that I really am fond of, just the way it looks. Other than that, I'm a little biased towards the I Like Ikes. I have 2 I Like Ike buttons, and there's a lot of them out there. So if you want to get a hold of them, they're fairly cheap. I've never got that question before. That's a great question. Okay. All right. What else we got? Any, thank you, Chanceomania. I sent a super chat a little earlier. Oh, crap. I missed it. I'm sorry. But Dole is also the last Republican to win his birth state in a U.S. presidential election. Gore lost in 2000 in his home state of Tennessee. Wait, what? Are you serious, Clark? 2004, Bush. Oh, Republican. Okay, wait. Birth state, because George W. Bush was born in Connecticut. And then Trump was born in New York and lost. Yeah, you were right. Very good fun factoid there. I had to verify that fact. I'm a fact checker. Okay. Thank you for sharing that. Okay. So looks like the super chats are out. Oh, nope. Just got another one. Interstate Kyle. Okay, got to announce this. Here in probably 3 or 4 months is now the plan. And Kyle, if you're listening still, please, it's coming. I'm doing a big video about the interstate highway system. And Interstate Kyle is a wonderful YouTube channel you should subscribe to, who is helping me out. He goes around on interstates and films all of the interstates. Pretty much at this point, he's got most of them filmed. Anyway, he went on I-70, this past summer and passed through Russell, Kansas on I-70 back in June. So did I, by the way. That would have been weird if we were on that stretch at the same time. There's a sign there that says it's the home of Senator Bob Dole. Rest in peace, Bob Dole. Yes, there is. If you ever are out that way, 2 places really. If you're headed from Kansas City to Denver, stop by Lawrence to the Dole Institute. It's like a presidential museum. You can walk right in. It's free. It's amazing. Like I said many times, I'm close to it. I've been there. There's also speakers that come. I've seen speakers there. That also, if you go to Russell, there's also, I think, a small museum in Russell as well. So if you're a Bob Dole fan and you're between Kansas City and Denver, I-70, you're not going too far off the interstate to get to those 2 places. Subscribe to Interstate Kyle. Thanks, Kyle, for the super chat. Okay. Just scrolling through here. Oh, we got some. Oh, my gosh. Is that right? 96 American dollars? Are you serious, Jack? Thank you, Jack. Wow. I'm going to Vegas after this. Bring the kids, honey. Anyway, thank you, Jack. No, I will invest that into history books. All the wisdom does not reside in one party. He did say that, didn't he? He had all kinds of quotes like that. He was very similar to George Washington, who, by the way, I'm currently working on a George Washington video, by the way. Have you heard of him? But very anti-partisan. Modern politicians would do well to keep that philosophy in mind. Amen. Yes. Rest in peace, the Sunflower Senator. Well spoken, Jack. Thanks for the great stream, and go Chiefs. Thank you so much for the kind words and donation. Oh, that's right. I wonder what part of Missouri you were from, because, now that there's no Rams. But yeah, we're all rooting for the Chiefs. Good. Yeah. I don't know how they're doing. They're playing, speaking of Denver, they're playing the Broncos tonight. Oh, Broncos. I think it's funny how this landed during the. I don't even know if Dole was an NFL fan, but he did play football. Played it for KU for a short while. Geo Scholar, a regular supporter. Check out the Geo Scholar stuff on YouTube. Thank you. America lost a treasure when Bob Dole died. I find it fitting only right that you're making this stream. Well, yeah, I just had to, and I had a busy day today, and I was like, the heck with it. I'm doing this. By the way, the interstate system has elements of military geography. Yes, it does. I was going to bring that up in the video, which is a big reason why Eisenhower was so hands-on with it. Thank you, GeoScholar. Check out the GeoScholar on YouTube. Okay. Looks like I'm caught up on Super Chats, so thank you for that. It has been an hour. If there's any last-minute questions, I'll try to answer them. What is your opinion on Olive Garden? They have wonderful bread. I love Olive Garden, but it's a lot of carbs. Yeah, I hope Carter makes it to 100. Yeah, that would be pretty cool. I wonder, the next two presidents, I released that. It was kind of a crazy coincidence again that I released that video about how every American president died. I released that 2 days ago, and the video, it's doing well, surprisingly. But I was a little worried. I was like, well, we got a couple presidents that health-wise haven't been doing very well. And the two Southern presidents, Jimmy Carter, who, he is approaching 100. And then Bill Clinton was in the hospital a few months ago as well, not doing the best. But they're hanging in there. And, it's just good to see a lot of just people in general living longer lives. I don't know if many of you realize this, but the life expectancy, not just because of COVID, but even before COVID, has been going down in the United States. And the big reason why is the opioid crisis. But I'm hoping that we turn that around here in the coming years. It just seems like watching that Bob Dole speech where he's like, I'm optimistic about the future. Things are going to continue to get better. But it does seem like the last few years have been a step back in some ways. And I know that the COVID-19 has not helped that at all. I do try to see the silver lining all the time. I think that I was hoping that the COVID-19 pandemic would bring us together. It hasn't, but at the same time, it's amazing the technological developments that we've seen with vaccines and all that. So maybe that's a silver lining. I don't know. Try to see the silver lining. All right. Well, any other questions or how did I find out about Bob Dole? He was my senator when I was a kid. I grew up in Kansas. Oh, there was Alex. I recognize you. Yes. Thank you. Speaking of the opioid crisis, yeah. Do you think legalizing marijuana would help alleviate the impacts of it, as several studies have shown? Yeah, definitely. We've seen promising results in the states that have legalized it. It's a drug. You got to be careful. You got to regulate it. Kids shouldn't have it. It affects brain development. But overall, it's a positive for, I think, society, for adults, because it gets them off the more hardcore drugs. A lot of those hardcore drugs, like the opioids, are legal and are regulated, but are still ridiculously easy to get. So, right now, okay. I'm glad I stuck around because I knew that Max T, as a Canadian citizen, I love Canada. I got to say that. I love the United States, but anyway, I am thankful for this channel. Learning about American history is pretty freaking cool. R.I.P. Senator Dole, and thank you, Mr. Beat. Oh, well, great. Thanks for sharing that, Max. Thanks for the super chat. And, there's a lot to admire about Canada. I'm learning more and more about Canada and Canadian politics and history, mostly because of JJ, which he makes fun of me for. He's like, you shouldn't just watch me to learn this stuff. I'm not your go-to source. Please don't just go to. But the more I find out about it, the more fascinated I am as well. Oh, Emperor Tiger Star's back. He's still here. You're here, man. By the way, he's the reason why I've decided I'm going to compare Missouri to Iowa. Not Iowa. I changed my mind to Arkansas because of Emperor Tiger Star. I was going to do Missouri and Iowa, and just Emperor Tiger Star has roots to, Missouri, and he knows better than anyone. And subscribe to Emperor Tiger Star. Why haven't you subscribed to his channel? Just to poke fun at Missouri-Kansas rivalry. Every Missouri president candidate won. Every Kansan one lost. Oh, yeah, that's right. See, and I have a video about that state rivalry. It's called Why Kansas Hates Missouri, or Why Missouri Hates Kansas. You can look it up. There's a lot of history between our two states, But that's the reason why I'm not doing compared the geography series for Kansas and Missouri, because I've already done Kansas and Nebraska. Plus, I already did that rivalry video. So, yeah, that's something I didn't put in that video. I didn't even really know about that, surprisingly. So, thanks for bringing that to my attention. Freaking Mizzou. By the way, Kansas and Missouri, their basketball teams are playing in a few days. Holy crap, for the first time since 2012. Most of you don't even care. That's all right. Okay, I'm hoping I didn't miss any super chats. I don't think I did. Okay, I'm going to go ahead. Look, guys, I'm missing the Chiefs game. I'm going to go see how they're doing. Hopefully it's going well for the Chiefs. So thank you for watching. Rest in peace, Bob Dole. At the very least, if you don't know who Bob Dole is, I'm hoping you learned some stuff tonight. And I've put links in the description to learn more. I have a new video coming out tomorrow that's a short, and I have a George Washington video coming out after that. So been staying busy. Thank you for your continued support. I'm supposed to say this at the end of every live stream, that Jeffrey Epstein did not kill himself, or that he did kill him. Wait, yeah, he didn't kill himself. Yeah, he was probably murdered. Thanks for watching. Have a good night.